thank you for joining us. As your career spans many years across many organizations, including the government of India, for example, can you give an idea about how Indian air cargo industry really evolved? Because you must have seen many things changing in your career.
Do a flashback. It's now been 33 years that I've been involved with cargo across multiple organizations. I left the country in 91, moved to the Middle East, was there for 21 years, serving in few organizations which were both forwarding organizations, GSE organizations, and as well as airline organizations. I came back to the country in 2012 and was then with Saudi till 2016, and after that from 2017 onwards till about 2 months ago I was with the Government of India with a company called iClass, a 100% subsidiary of the Airport Authority of India. Journey has been extremely fulfilling so far. It's given me personally the opportunity to work on a 360-degree work. Let me put that in context. What that would mean is being from a forwarder to a consolidator to a GSA to an airline to a ground handler to a terminal operator, and I'm now again working in a role of heading the GSA organization, which is for a company called Aviapro, representing Vistara Cargo for India. So if you see the trajectory of cargo that has happened over the last, let's say, 30 years or so, you see it having a gradual increase in business over this period of time. There were ups and downs, whether it was the Gulf Wars, whether it was the currency crisis in 2008. Cargo has been the pivotal role that has been played in the economy and in the industry. The only difference being the prominence that cargo got in the last couple of years, which we unfortunately call the pandemic years. Cargo has gained a lot of prominence and visibility, not just in the eyes of, let's say, the ministry, the government, but also in the eyes of the common public. They do now realize that how cargo, especially air cargo, contributed to saving lives. So the flow of cargo over the years has been one that has gone from people thinking this is a luxury to now people thinking, this is a necessity. And I think that's been the biggest change that has been taken in the mindset of the entire ecosystem.
Do you think the stakeholders also evolved in the same way and adopted to these new challenges that came in and this idea of changing from a luxury to a necessity?
Oh, absolutely. So earlier what was happening was the entire ecosystem was not so much a cohesive unit as it is being today. There was interdependability. You can't have, how do you fill cargo if there are no passengers, because majority of the aircrafts are still belly aircrafts. Number two, no aircraft, no commercial aircraft in the world today is still manufactured which does not take cargo. Every single commercial aircraft today so produced is designed in such a way that you do have passengers and you have cargo. And this purely goes from the shape of the aircraft. The stakeholders now begin to realize that instead of this being a byproduct of the normal business, this is now moving to an essential core function of the business with the stakeholders around it contributing to the growth. Okay, so it's moved from the periphery circle to the core. And it's my estimation that this core is only going to expand as we move forward. Pandemic has shown all of us how this is going to create a new form of an ecosystem where data, integration of data, quality of data is going to be extremely paramount in our business. So that's going to be the way forward that's going to take place.
You're working very closely with the government of India, for example. So there are many developments happening from the government of India's side. For example, the push for the infrastructure development in terms of new airports, for example. Then there is a push to reduce the logistics cost mostly. So all these things would definitely positively impact the air cargo industry as well. How do you think these new policy developments from a push from the government would affect the air cargo industry, and how the air cargo industry should be preparing itself for that?
I'll answer this question in two parts. First, let's get to the logistics cost. I think one of the points that should be made very clear to everybody is the logistics cost so portrayed earlier, the whole 14% mark, is now under a serious question. There is a debate currently on in various forums on where does this number come from and how is this number based. My sense of feeling is that we are not 14. or we somewhere in probably the high sevens or low eights. That's my feeling that we get. And that basically stems from the fact that this cost that we are talking about is a composition of costs of the entire ecosystem, right? But if you take the air freight component of this cost, we are far more efficient than the other forms, right? Keeping aside the cost of the actual transport, the other costs like your handling, etc., are not even worth mentioning, right? So they cannot have such big of an impact on the overall logistics cost of the business. Yeah. Where you have this high cost is the cost of inventory, the cost of having inefficiencies in other forms of the ecosystem. The air freight industry is a highly time sensitive, time critical, asset heavy industry in terms of aircrafts that are being deployed. There is absolutely no reason why anybody would have a delays. What's important to understand is that the framework from which we operate is very specific to certain products that need or that will be sustainable for the value that it generates to the end customer. So if you have high value mobile phones, it also requires high value of components. And these high value components need to fly, right? So it's not always a fact that, you are making something which does not involve a high value input cost. Not always necessary. Number one. Number two, look at the infrastructure development or the infrastructure push that the government of India has been doing. In my previous role and capacity, this infrastructure was very, very critical because it's the supply of facilities that is going to create a demand for the same. Right? Now, if you've heard the Honorable Minister at various forums, especially in the last 2 months, 3 months, etc., you get a clear sense of message from him saying that we want to create, we want to develop, we want to take this further. And that stimulates from a couple of points. One is, of course, the flagship program of the ministry, which is the Krishi Udan. Krishi doesn't grow in cities. Krishi grows in tier 2 and tier 3 cities. Probably tier 4 cities, if that's a new term you want to use. How are you going to connect them? Okay, some of these closest cities to airports are over 10, 12, 14 hours of drive. Right? We do not still have that kind of quality packing within the industry that's going to survive this kind of distance being traveled. Is airports the only option? Yes. But you don't need to have 5-star airports. You can have these airports which are, as I would say, efficient airports that are specifically designed to handle small to medium types of aircrafts which can connect to tier 2, tier 3 cities and the main cities going forward for onwards distribution. Will we connect every city to every city in India? Probably at some point in the future it will happen. It's not going to happen now. Airports are extremely expensive pieces of real estate that has to be monetized very carefully. Second, airports are in limited areas. You can't expand an airport simply overnight. It really doesn't work that way, right? There is a finite area of an airport, and as always, there would be the preference given for passengers flying out of that airport. As we move forward, we'll have to look at two very important technological developments. One is to have your processes getting more efficient. The greater amount of efficiency you bringing in the processes, okay, the less of manpower which should be involved in it, less amount of mistakes, etc., etc., etc. That's the first part. Second is to go as digital as possible. Okay, I often say this. One of the best areas that blockchain can be very successfully deployed, and it has started already in certain markets, is in the air freight market. Because you have a lot of data exchange between different stakeholders, right from the shipper to the consignee. It's not a 2 or 3 stage. There are multiple stages, especially when you get into international transit, international transshipment markets. A combination of ease of doing business with digitization, process enhancement is going to leapfrog our business. Let's not forget something. We hear this word 10 million metric tons. It's not going to come out of magic, right? There has to be that product or set of products that need to be imbibed into the system. Having said that, you're also going to see transit cargo, like you heard the Honorable Senior Economic Advisor, you've heard this from the Minister himself. where they've started talking about making India transshipment hubs. Every airline, as in every company, will deploy its assets where they are assured or they have a forecast of some form of good returns on their capital. That's a given. It's any business as other business operate. The challenge to the entire statement that I made is whenever the costs rise, okay, the shippers always look at cutting costs from the transportation sector. This is highly unfortunate, okay, and I personally think it's more to do with the fact that we seem to be very vulnerable to this. And I think probably it's high time that we get the kind of respect that air cargo generates in terms of the value that it brings to the table, and that value is getting monetized. That's very important.
Looking a little further, do you think really the 10 million tons of target is really achievable? That's one thing. Also, can India really become the transshipment hub, for example? From a policy perspective, or what are the other policy interventions that Indian government should look into? For example, adhering to the Cape Town Convention, for example, yeah, making, for example, India an aircraft leasing hub or financing hub, for example. Are we on the right direction? Are all these things really achievable?
Okay, so multiple questions. I'll take them one by one. Short answer for all your questions is yes, no doubt about it. Will we achieve the 10 million? It's not a question of if, it's going to be a question of when. All right. Original target was 2027. It's now moved to 2030. Achievable for sure. Probably a year or two that would come, and that mainly depends on extraneous factors. Second part of your question was, how is this capacity going to be impacted with new policies or the policies that you want from the government? If you look at the asks that the industry put to this government, I think there was a wish list of about 30 or 35 points. I think almost 30 have been done. There are a few of them not done. You see the government of India now taking these kind of steps, not in bits and pieces, not in isolation, but in a collective form. You also see that the government now realizing that it is not just a single ministry working in isolation to get this done. This is a consolidated effort that involves other ministries. Let me give you an example. If you take the Krishi Udan project, okay, for the first time in the country, there are 8 ministries involved in this project. Okay, you need to coordinate with 8 ministries to see that they are all in tune with the vision of the Honorable Prime Minister of doubling farmers' income, whether they are in, and they have to be in line with the way the entire processes are taking place. So, a clear example of what Gati Shakti is all about. This is Gati Shakti. I think this is one of the finest examples of Gati Shakti, is this coordinated mechanism of various ministries having a single point agenda of achieving a certain target that needs to be achieved. There are so many other examples. If you take even the examples of the vaccine movement that is being taken place, or the movement of the essentials during the pandemic, I think it's a classic textbook example of how everybody succeeds when we are taking this together. Did we do it flawlessly? No, we didn't. But we did it in such a way that we satisfied the needs of the ultimate customer. And I think the government's policies that were in tune with this were extremely critical and extremely clear. There was not much of ambiguity or in terms of is it applicable, is it not applicable, this is no. It was a very clear, simple statement of what the policy is and how this will be applied. So, two things you can take away from that. One, people who wanted to do business by air were very clear as to what is applicable. The stakeholders, on the other hand, are also very clear on what is to take place. Going forward in the future, if there are roadblocks that would come up during this process, they will be taken care of, and I have complete faith in the government that they are looking into each and every issue, because a government that says that we need to do 10 million tons is not going to go and revise that figure anytime. They are going to make sure that it happens, and it's us in the ecosystem that needs to ensure not how is it going to happen, Our focus is only going to be when is it going to happen. That's got to be our focus. In my present role as the GSA for Vistara, we are ramping up capacity. We are getting to ensure that our customers are getting the capacity they want. We are ensuring that we are being responsive to the market. And that is very important for us going forward, both internationally, domestically, and in transit.
As an industry leader who led this industry through one of the most challenging times in the history of this industry, can you give me some of the learnings that you had, or what is your message to the newcomers to this industry? Because there is new increasing demand for supply chain management and people coming into this area of logistics.
So let's go with the learnings. This statement may sound cliche, but to me the learnings are simple. One, we will rise up to the challenge no matter what. We have the resilience, we have the technological capabilities, we have the wherewithal to make it succeed. We do not, and again, another statement is failure is not an option for us. You can't fail. Strike that option out of the table. We have, like I mentioned in the panel discussion this morning, I had a clear message given from the government that no one or no situation is going to take place wherein we are going to be faced with having a casualty because of a failure within the air freight ecosystem. And I'm very proud, extremely proud of this fact that we lived up to that expectation. Second, we are also the land of Jugaad. We will find a way how to solve it. Okay, it may not be written in textbooks. It may not be written in any lectures. Probably a lot of us had faced it the first time, but putting two heads together was a very, very clear sign for us on how we're going to take this forward and how we're going to succeed. Message to people joining this industry, a simple statement that I will make is, don't make this your last choice to get in. Make this your first opportunity. This industry is going to be a very tech-heavy industry as we move forward. The businesses are changing, the methodology of this business is changing, but the core philosophy, the core business practices will not change. You will still see the 777-300 ERs for the next 20 years. You will see the 787s probably for the next 20-25 years. So your basic aircraft is not going to change. Your holds are not going to change. Your containers are not going to change. Your pallets are not going to change. What is going to change probably is going to be the type of cargo that you're going to carry. All right. So our focus is going to shift not just in terms of equipment, but in terms of products. You shift to what the customer wants from you. Okay. Cliche statement, no two customers are the same. Perfectly right. But what's going to be different is each of the customers' demands are going to be in some sort of a form quite unique. And we need to prepare solutions for that uniqueness. Okay, you didn't hear of vaccines taking a center stage 2 years ago. You did not hear about e-commerce becoming such a big commodity 5 years ago, right? So look into the future. Ask yourselves, what's going to be the next big product / route / city pair / market mix / consumer? Okay, I always like to benchmark any of our businesses with something called the manufacturers index. There's a manufacturing index that comes out quite regularly, especially from the Far East, where the managers of various manufacturing companies put out trends that analyzes where the current manufacturing is and where in the very near future the trend is moving towards. So there's an index that is being moved towards that. And I think those numbers start giving you an idea of which way the market goes. Of course, this is tech-based. Of course, this is data-driven. Of course, things can change based on that as well. No doubt about it. But at least you are now getting inputs from the manufacturers themselves. All right. The earlier scope of things was, okay, the airlines talk to forwarders, etc. Today, that's moving forward. There are multi-level, multi-directional, multi-customer discussions that are going on between different stakeholders in this industry. All right. And that is a very good thing. Shippers today have got the information that they already had from a long time. What we need to do is try to extract that information or that part of the information upon which decisions can be taken. That is something that we need to drive. And that is what I think the next generation is going to look very closely into.
Do you see an enthusiasm from the stakeholder side to adopt some of these advanced technologies like the AI or the ML, and which are the places where they will be applied as you see it right now? For example, pricing is a good place where you can apply that, the capacity management, for example, or maybe you can predict some of the pricing, or you can efficiently use your aircraft, for example. Which are the areas that you specifically see this advancement of technology coming in?
I talked about blockchain. Let's go to AI or ML. ML will take a little time. We're not ready so much for it. AI probably will come a little earlier. I think some forms of AI in the data collection point, or what companies like Wiz or Flexport are already doing, will come in. I'm not too concerned about the technology. I'm more concerned about the application of that technology, or how that technology will be monetized for the benefit of the industry without raising the cost of doing business. Let's get one thing very clear. There's a cost attached to any investment, right? And no one is going to do an investment purely for the fun of it. Okay, there has to be a monetary as well as a non-monetary benefit to it. What it is, how much is a different topic for discussion. That's not important at this moment. What's important to understand is how will it benefit the entire industry. We still work in silos in many places. We still do multiple data touch points. Okay, blockchain is the first thing that's going to wipe this thing out completely. Data should be entered once and that's it. Finished. Whoever wants to get that data has to get it from one source. If you see the Government of India's ULIP, the Unified Logistics Integration Platform, you clearly see the intent of the government where they say that feed in information into a particular platform, okay, which is accessible to the rest. Okay, we discussed about the logistics cost. Here is one logistics cost as an example that's going to benefit everybody, right? You have data capture at one point, okay? You have no reason to duplicate that data, whichever department. Today, you have API integrations on different platforms. Before, there was a problem with, is my platform going to talk to your platform? And there were blockers. That's done. Today, it's very simple to integrate various platforms. So what happens when you integrate platforms? You will ensure that those platforms talk into each other, drive synergies. When you drive synergies, you drive down costs. When you drive down costs, you get more efficient. And when you get more efficient, you get more business. Utilization of a resource, whether it is on an IT platform, or whether it is on a physical warehouse platform, or whether it is inside the aircraft, these are resources, right? And in our industry, there is one very crucial point, and that is once the door of an aircraft closes, any unavailable capacity has perished, right? So perishable is not the main thing that perishes in our industry. Something that perishes even more than perishable is wasted or unutilized capacity. So where we talk about increase in capacities, etc., let's ensure that we are efficiently using the capacity we have on hand today. That's critical for us. And unless that is done, okay, we are just merely speculating, right? Let's talk of what we have here and now. Going forward, as we get into technology of, especially of AI, like I said, ML will take a little time because that needs a lot of data churning. We don't have that kind of base data as yet where ML can be effectively implemented. But if we get into initiatives that the government has, like the NACS program or the ULIP program, etc., you see a clear sign moving towards it. There's a definite way forward to it, and that is something we need to focus on. That look, here is something that the government is initiating. All right, let's integrate, let's do synergies, and let's focus on those areas where we want to grow our businesses. Okay, whether we are a terminal operator, a forwarder, a consolidator, a shipper, a consignee, a customs house agent, a broker, whoever, the focus needs to shift on growing the business. That's when your 10 million tons and your other targets that you're given by the ministry will succeed.
What do you think is the future of Indian air cargo in next 5 to 10 years, and where you want the air cargo industry to be in next 5 to 10 years?
What are my options? There is no option. There is only one way to go, and that is up. When we fixed the 10 million metric tons cargo target, this was not a random number out of the hat. The number was clearly decided after taking various factors into consideration. Yeah, we had a dip because of COVID. My estimate is if it wasn't COVID, we should be somewhere around the 3.9 to 4 million metric tons this year. Or we're going to close at 3.2 to 3.3, we will close. Looking at the growth of the industry, let's say vis-a-vis the shipping industry, all right, in spite of the higher container rates today, you still have a lot of shippers moving by sea. Okay, that is a worrying sign for us. And my personal take on this is that we as an airline or as an industry together have not innovated as much or as quickly as what the shipping industry has done, or for that matter, the road industry has done. Look at the roads being built in the country today. All right, look at the railway lines that are being built today. Look at the dedicated corridors that we've done today. As an industry, these modes of transport have grown exponentially. You can truck cargo today between Bombay and Delhi in about 18 hours. You have a dedicated corridor coming up. You have high-speed railways coming up. You have connectivity coming up on the inland movement. In all of this, where do you hear about what's happened in the air freight? Unless we are innovating, and when I say innovating, and I'm not specifically mentioning innovation in one particular area, whether it's a process or digitization or whatever, it is more as an industry for different players. How can I maximize the utilization of the capacity I have in any part of the business, as a forwarder, as a terminal operator, as a warehouse operator, in any form, as a logistician, as a supply chain specialist? How am I optimally using my resources? That is going to define how quickly you are going to get to your 10 million metric tons of cargo. And I am very sure that this is not going to come just from India. India will play a very big role on it, but you need to get the support of cargo that is being transshipped as well. And together, like I said earlier, there is no option. You will make that.
Thank you so much, Mr. Keku.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me over.